What do we really know about the homeless situation now?
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Great to have you aboard. Thanks very much for tuning in. I hope your Thanksgiving was terrific. It was for many of us, hopefully most of us. Some of us didn't have, never mind a turkey dinner, didn't have a place to stay. And, you know, it's always this time of year that we start to pay attention to this stuff, obviously, because of the temperatures. But what we have right now is an exponential growth in the number of people who are without any kind of roof over their head, unless you call a tent a roof, or the roof of your car, or anything along that line. And so I think we got to dig into it. And it's a big challenge for the governor. You know, I know that he is interested in making this thing better, but the devil's in the details, and in a lot of catch-up work. So tonight we have a couple of advocates who are full court pressing this administration, have done so for a long time. It's not just this administration that they're paying attention to, but there's new data and there's new trending here that I think ought to give everybody some pause. So hopefully you'll understand a little bit more about the challenge after this broadcast is over. Let me just open up. This is kind of a conversation to start in the middle of the sandwich. There's no real beginning, middle, or end to this, unless we ever have an end to the plight that the homeless have in terms of just immediate shelter, which I think ought to be accomplishable because it seems like there's a finite number. Anyway, trying to make some inroads into what is about a 500 or 600 number of people who have nowhere to go right now is a new addition, but listen to how difficult it is for just 50 beds.
This is an important issue. As I said, it's impacting hundreds of people.
With winter just around the corner and homelessness across our state on the rise, Governor Dan McKee and his staff making a major announcement in the fight to combat the issue.
Announcing a 24/7 warming station that's going to be opening up in the Armory on Cranston Street.
McKee says that he hopes to have the Cranston Street Armory up and ready in the next few weeks and run through April 15th. But he says it won't happen overnight.
There's going to be public hearings.
He says the Cranston Street Armory will be a way to get plenty of Rhode Islanders out of the cold and help get them back on their feet.
There's going to be beds. There is also going to be services, and it's going to be monitored for safety, and then also providing transitional strategies that as they open up, so that it's not a long-term stay strategy.
McKee says $1.4 million has been directed to raise the statewide shelter capacity to over 1,000, adding the state-directed $166 million to support affordable housing efforts and over $9 million in federal funds to expand services to those facing housing insecurity.
Take time, and that's why, but we're going to have to build out units, and we're going to have to strategically place them around the state. Our goal was to hit that 350 to 380 that we were told during the summer that was the goal. We know it's a moving target. We know that that number could be increasing, and so now the warming station here at Cranston is to help offset those particular increases.
Yeah, so it's 50 beds, and it's an offset, but it is kind of chasing your tail here, it seems like. Let me introduce my guests, Margaux Morisseau. Very French.
Yes.
Yes, welcome. She's the Deputy Director of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Homelessness, and Eric Hirsch is a professor of sociology and studies this stuff and leads on this stuff in the community. From PC, another Friar in the house.
Absolutely.
You getting ready for the big game this weekend? Are you just because you go to PC doesn't mean you're a basketball fan.
I am a basketball.
So good. All right. So,
Celtics and Providence.
all right. Well, we're recording this, of course, on Thursday. You're seeing it on Friday night on Fox and Sunday night on 12. So if you're watching this on Sunday night, you know the outcome. And I shall be at the microphone, not pulling for the Friars. So let's get that established right away.
Absolutely.
Great to have you guys in. You know, one of the things that I think is really hard about this is that it's big news for an incremental 50 beds. While you're saying, guess what? You mentioned to me on the radio the other day this exponential, almost doubling factor since 2019 of people who you determined to be without a roof over their head in a safe place. Off the top of your head, the numbers are?
I have the latest number as of Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving being the day when the governor guaranteed that anyone who needed a shelter bed would be able to get one. That number is 459. So these are people who spent at least one night in a place not meant for human habitation, that's the phrase, over the last 2 weeks. And we know that this is a pretty good estimate. It's not a perfect number, definitely not. But we know it's a pretty good estimate because when we really did a comprehensive count back in January, there were 280 people outside, and this number that we get from our database also said there were 280 people outside. So we think this is a good estimate.
So that's January of 22, the beginning of this particular calendar year.
Right.
And if I recall, you had told me literally it was, I'm just using rough numbers, it was 70, 140,
Yes.
280, and now inside that calendar year we have doubled it again.
That's right.
Why, Margaux?
There's a number of factors leading to this. First, one of the reasons is the pandemic. So what we're seeing is the numbers are 5 times the amount that they were before the pandemic. So the pandemic had a great toll on people being out of work, not being able to pay their rent. We also know that the housing market has exploded. And right now, an average 2-bedroom apartment in Rhode Island is $1,771, which means that you need an income of $70,000 to afford that apartment. So people are getting displaced from their apartments faster than we've ever seen it in Rhode Island.
But that number is totally real.
Yeah.
If there's any, if you're on the couch thinking, oh, come on, because you've been in your home for a while, or it is totally real. I got a 20-something daughter in the house. Trying to figure a cute way to say that, but you know, she's a working professional.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, probably giving you too much information, but she's living at home because she's being smart. She's socking some dough away so that she can step into this housing market in a much more, I don't know, comfortable way. Parents of my generation are at least honest enough to be able to say, I don't know how these kids are doing it. Because the cost of homes is so outrageous right now, and incomes have not kept up. So that's just an economic issue that everybody is dealing with.
I mean, the private housing market in Rhode Island is really only serving the top half of households in terms of income. The entire bottom half can't really afford not just a home, they can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment either, which we usually use 30% of income as what's affordable. So you have people spending 50, 60% of their income on rent. I mean, we know people who might spend their entire income on rent. And the people who go to like the soup kitchens, people assume, well, those are the homeless people. No, they're people who are spending that much of their income on their rent, and so they can't afford food.
Which is why I think we should talk about what seems to be a new dynamic here inside these rising numbers. There is a broad generalization I think most people will have about the category of homeless folks. Those who are addicted, those who have, there's a picture people have in their minds. But this new wave, and by the way, they're no less important in God's eyes and in our eyes here. So let's not discount. I'm not trying to minimize that population that people at least will visualize in their heads. But this growth is working stiffs.
Yes.
These are people who are still collecting paychecks, who all of a sudden just came up to an eviction notice because either the rent is being jacked up or there's some other dynamic involved there, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
These aren't people that you would consider you know, on the public blank, if you know what I mean.
Correct.
Yes?
Yes, I've met women who are currently experiencing homelessness, who are living in their cars with their children, and who get up every morning and put on their work clothes and go to work, and then after work come back home to their cars, and that's just not right. And when we think of the rise of homelessness, we're seeing record numbers of people who are experiencing homelessness for the first time. So we're not talking about the people who are chronically homeless, even though we need to find that solution as well. But these are people who have never experienced homelessness before. A lot of people are still working full-time, a lot of families, a lot of youth homelessness. So we really need to have multiple solutions to address this crisis.
All right, when we come back, we'll dig into what a couple of those might be. Stay with us. So just Wednesday night, some folks, many of whom are, you know, in those tents out, you know, on the State House property or inside as the Christmas tree lighting is going on. Listen, you know, full disclosures, everybody who watches this show and listens on the radio knows I consider myself a good friend of the governor's, and I know that he's interested in handling this, but I think he's come to the understanding that this number is bigger than they've been prepared for, and that now having a housing secretary in Josh Saul, who was working for Commerce in the housing area, now has been elevated to this position. This guy's got his hands full. He was on the radio with me last week in rather unimpressive fashion, threw me more rhetoric than specifics in response. I'm hoping he's better at his job than he was in that interview, and I'm concerned about the space between the folks on the ground who know and the folks who are in a position to go, right, and to do some things here. And I think the governor is open-minded enough to keep saying, look, I gotta figure this whole thing out. Here's the thing about the politics of it. So I was watching a Channel 12 news package. In fact, you know what? Why don't let me call an audible here, and let's play this, Matt, if we can. Let's play Sheena Lasciuto's story from just a couple of nights ago on the Cranston situation, if we can, please.
On a day like today, that's brutally cold for somebody to have to try to survive.
Laura Jaworski, the executive director of the House of Hope, was one of many speaking at recent Cranston City Council meetings. She says pallet shelters, like the one you see here, would make a world of a difference for someone trying to survive.
We're pushing for the use of rapidly deployable shelters. They are a safe way to deliver temporary emergency shelter to people until we can get more housing online for folks.
In a letter to the Cranston City Council, Rhode Island's housing secretary wrote that his office, the governor's office, and Mayor Hopkins' team met to discuss the idea of putting those shelters at the Pastori General Complex in Cranston. The idea is to give shelter.
I've talked to the governor. He knows my position very clearly.
Something the mayor says he's been against since day one, citing the city is already home to shelters like Harrington Hall.
We just can't have it there anymore. We do enough here in the city of Cranston, and I'll even help the governor if he needs help in finding spots in the state.
The Cranston City Council just voted on a resolution which, if passed, would have expressed disapproval of the pallet shelters. It ultimately did not move forward. Today, I asked the mayor, do you think the city of Cranston already has enough resources for those living without shelter right now?
We've got the biggest shelter in the state. The Harrington Hall is the biggest shelter for homeless people. Many of them have criminal past.
We should be having conversations with all 39 cities and towns about how can they participate in coming up with a solution to say yes in my backyard, and that people really need a dignified place to sleep that is not outside.
So I brought Laura on the radio on Wednesday to explain to her, and I don't think I had to explain to her because she's a pretty smart cookie. Fat chance. This is what it really has crystallized for me all the years, kind of paying attention to this matter. And as a sociologist who teaches on this, I'm sure I'm not teaching you, but I've learned something. It's kind of, you know, sometimes it's like the golf swing. You keep working on something until something clicks, and you go, ah, I get it now. There is no community that's ever going to say, can I help?
Yeah.
So the only thing you can do as a leader, and in this particular dynamic with the state being constructed the way it is the governor's got to make this call, right? The governor's just got to say, like the Nike commercial, we're just doing it. Because the Cranston mayor has a constituency he's trying to protect, and unfortunately for him, state land exists in Cranston. Oh well, and that's what makes maybe the pallet deal palatable. I don't want to make a speech. You're here to be a guest on my program, but the concept's got there's no political win daily in getting this done, but at the end, there's a political win in being the one who solved the crisis. Thought?
And I absolutely agree. This is the biggest problem we face. And a big part of it.
It's only 450 people.
Yeah, I mean.
And you know what? Most of them made their beds, and they're lying in it.
Well, I mean, they didn't make their beds. The housing market made their beds. It made them not be able to get a bed.
A significant proportion right now, but of course, there are others who have made their beds.
So long-term homeless people overwhelmingly have physical and/or behavioral health disabilities, and many of them are unable to work, and it's often behavioral health, anxiety and depression, other forms of mental health problems that are very difficult to overcome and be able to work full-time. And we give them their free ride, quote unquote, is $800 or $900 a month, without a housing subsidy to supplement that. So these people can't even afford a one-bedroom apartment or even an efficiency apartment. So that's the reality, that this is due to the failure of the housing market, and the government has to step in. And people are using these stereotypes about homeless people. You know, that they all have criminal backgrounds, that they're all substance abusers.
So I throw that out there.
And they're using those to say, we don't want, quote unquote, these people in our community or anywhere near our community.
Well, panhandlers and there's all sorts of nuisance, I mean, real nuisance issues that go along with dealing with the homeless population that are real. And I understand that local politicians, including the sponsor of the resolution in Cranston, you know, is defending his ward, which is the easy thing to do, and which is his objective. But my point with the governor, I have not spoken with him about this, but it's going to be pretty clear, which is hell with it.
Yeah.
Hell with it.
Right.
Because right now, the worst part is, you know, 27 people croak. Guess what? That's the headline that will end your legacy before it even gets started.
Yeah.
So what do you want them to do?
We really,
like right now, what do you want them to do?
So
actually, you know what? I got a break. When we come back, they've got the floor, not me. What do you want them to do? Stay with us. Yeah, so there's the old Motel 6 on Jefferson Boulevard, which is now a facility for some of the homeless population for a period of time. The state's kicking in to put people in hotel rooms, and I believe that's about another 40 or 50 rooms. So that and the Armory, you know, are the big moves this week. And listen, we can't sneer at it. That's 100 folks who come off the street, hopefully, with some wraparound services and all the stuff that you guys on a professional level do. But that will still leave us about 400 short, right? Yes. At least.
Yes. And the Armory, it's just a request for proposals, and it's not clear whether any of these social service organizations are going to do what they're hoping they will do.
And the other thing that worried me about what the governor had to say was that there was still some public hearing stuff and that kind of thing. I'm guessing that the opposition will be light, but still, it's just the hoop you got to go through. Look, those pallets. You told me that it'll take what till if you ordered them all today at $7,500 a pop. Say you ordered 50 to 100 of them, you'd still be
6 to 8 weeks.
My thought is order them.
Yeah.
Yes, we should order them.
Like Christmas ornaments, you want to have them to be able to take them out of the box next year.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Even this year. If we get them in 6 to 8 weeks, they're still...
Yeah, it's cold in March.
It's still cold in March. And you know what? People need homes in the summer as well. So this would be an asset because the pallet houses also have cooling in them. And we do lose people on the street from overheating
They're
in
run
the
electrically,
summer.
they got to be on land where you waive liabilities, all that kind of stuff, which is why Pastore was a spot that they were looking at, because it's state land.
Correct.
Sorry, Governor, I'm sorry, Mayor, it's state land. Yeah, you know.
And we were proposing 30 to start as kind of a pilot to make sure that it's workable and that it would be
like all the stuff surrounding, because it's not just these things. You got to have an outside shower, blah blah blah. Blah. So in the interim, I only have a couple of minutes here. Is it hotel rooms?
For now, that's what we need immediately.
Have you targeted them? Have you done the research on behalf of the administration to?
We have relationships. A lot of the service providers have relationships with hotels from last winter. So that could easily be done immediately, but it takes a lot of money. Hotel programs are not cheap to operate.
Last time we did this, it was FEMA money. There was federal emergency management money.
So that money is now officially gone as of yesterday. So the FEMA
As
program,
are the rental stipends and all the things that have kept the housing, COVID housing thing connected.
right.
It's all gone now.
It's all gone.
They could have extended the program in the hotels, but the state would have to pay 25% of that. And I think they decided that was going to be too much of a cost. And so we got the Armory potential program as an alternative. And 50 beds is not going to do it.
All right.
The hotel program now is the only thing left before.
At an estimated total cost of what? Have you figured it out? We're talking tens of millions of dollars, are we not?
Yes, we are.
And
30 seconds. I only have 30 seconds. Your thought.
the service providers back in September had proposed a plan to the governor asking for $15 million to be able to house people before the cold weather started. And that plan was not acknowledged and not funded.
By whom?
By the governor and the administration. So now we're in a crisis situation. We need to have hotel rooms immediately, and we need to work on long-term solutions and quit with these Band-Aid solutions.
All right. Hopefully this number of 450 doesn't make 700 by
It goes
February.
up every day.
All right. We'll keep in touch on this on the radio and here. Thank you for your
Thank you.
advocacy. Final word when we come back. Look, the bottom line is, I believe the McKee administration has good faith, but at this point, the numbers have kind of gotten out of control, and there's going to have to be some resolve on this in a quick fashion. The problem with the hotel rooms is, you don't have anything left at the end of the season. These little structures might be the solution that we're looking for, but guess what? Local folks better get it in their minds. We need to do something. See ya.